Morning, America! How are we doing today? Yesterday's video was about post rocks. You probably won't know more about post rocks than you ever thought you'd ever want to know. I thought that was real interesting and everything. And while I was doing the research, you know, I'm sitting there trying to learn how they did it, how they built. Or I knew how they did it. I just wanted to see video of it and see actual how it was done, so I could explain it to you a little bit better. And while I was doing that, I kept running across new information and new stories, and next thing you know, I'm going down this rabbit hole into all kinds of different things that I never even dreamed of. I start by talking about fence posts, and next thing I'm learning about Volga Germans and Sophia the Princess and how they motivated people to move from point A to point B. And well, anyway, this is my story. All right. So back when I was in high school, I think there was a TV show called Connections. It was on PBS, and you can still find it on. They've loaded it all onto YouTube now. So if you want to go back and watch it, it's called Connections by James Burke. Really good shows. And the way his show was, he would take something. Let's say like this letter opener. He'd take this letter opener and tell you a story about it, and next thing you know, that letter opener led to the pen led to a stapler, the stapler led to glue, the next thing you know, and candle, you know, and it led down the line, you know, this invention led to that invention, because this guy figured this out, this next guy goes, hey, I've been trying to figure this out, and that invention helps me understand this one, and he made a new discovery, and it just kept going. So next thing, you go from a letter opener all the way up to like a nuclear fusion or something. It was a really, really good show. It's called Connections, how things are connected. And that's what I learned about with post rocks. Things are connected. I would have never guessed all this stuff until I started looking into it, and I'm like, that makes a pretty good story. So that's what I'm doing. I'm telling you about it. So what happened was, let's see, where can I start? Okay, I wanted to learn about the post rocks and how they were made and everything, and then I kind of find out who made them. Okay, so you find out who made them, and they're called the Volga Germans. And I'm like, okay, yeah, the Germans. My grandpa, he was from Germany, and my whole mother's side of the family is German. And I knew a lot of Germans, but I've never heard of Volga Germans. Or they must have been the Germans that were by the Volga River in Germany. And I'm looking, wait a minute, the Volga River, that's not in Germany. Where is that? And I looked at it, it's in Russia. Why would they be calling them the Volga Germans if they were from Germany and the Volga River's in Russia? Well, you're going to find out they all migrated there. Well, why would Germans pack up and leave and go to Russia? It didn't make any sense. Well, let's go back a little bit. There's this princess. She's a German princess. Her name is Sophia. And she just like all princesses back then, they were all married for political gain, and you know, this kingdom and this kingdom, they'd marry their kids together so they wouldn't war, you know, that kind of stuff. Trade agreements. That's how it was done back then. So Sophia, her mother really, really wanted to be married into a family and everything. And her mother was a very demanding kind of woman, you know, really, really aggressive go-getter, you know, social climber, you know, climbing the social ladder. And the problem was she was too old. She was a mother, and they were these nobles. They were looking for these young brides, not this middle-aged bride, right? So anyway, she would take her daughter to all these soirees and balls and whatever, but always made her sit in the back and, you know, out of sight kind of thing. I want to be the center of attention, you know. And there was this duke or something, I don't know, some royal guy. He goes, you know, where's your daughter at? Oh, well, she wasn't feeling good tonight. And she kept making excuses why her daughter wasn't there. Well, come to find out, this guy says, you know, I'm going to quit coming to these things if you don't, you know, I want to meet your, you know, Sophia, you know. So she kind of got her arm twisted into, okay, I got to introduce my daughter to this guy. So she introduces her daughter, and everything seemed great. Well, he was from Russia. So they arranged the marriage and everything, and I tell you all that about the mother and everything is because that story, as I was listening to that story, all I could think about is that's where they got the idea for Cinderella, the Disney movie, Cinderella, you know, the Disney show. And over-controlling stepmother in Disney, in real life it was over-controlling real mother that kind of wanted to keep her daughter in the shadows because she wanted to be the center of attention. And it was just, I listened to the story and it's just like, it's not, Cinderella's not about this, but I can see where somebody come up with the story because of Sophia. So anyway, they drag her up to Russia to marry this guy and everything. Well, he's the son that eventually became the Tsar of Russia, okay? And his name was Peter. Well, Peter the Great. I think it was Peter the Great. Oh, well, anyway, when they get married, and she gets, what's it called? I can't think of the right phrase. When they become king and queen or czar, they have the big ceremony. Well, a lot of times they'll take another name, like the grandfather's name or something like that, or the grandmother's name. Well, Sophia, she took some lady's name, Catherine, and became Catherine the Great. Okay, so here's Catherine the Great. And everybody loved Catherine the Great. She's from Germany, but she came up there and started with such gusto, learning the language, learning, you know, just everybody loved her. All the Russians loved her, and really didn't like their own son, Peter. They didn't like him, right? So they end up, Peter just kind of mismanaged everything, and everybody was just kind of grumbling, and you know, things aren't good. And it's a really good story to look into. But anyway, basically she deposes her own husband, kicks him out of office, and sends him into exile. So it's a hostile takeover by his own wife. So anyway, she becomes Catherine the Great. Well, why am I telling you about Catherine the Great when I'm talking about fence posts? Well, because Catherine the Great was up there, and she goes, you know, she's a very distrusting woman. And she says, I just don't like the idea of all these, the Asians up in like Mongolia, the Mongolians and all that. Yeah, I remember not too far in the past, back then, not too far from their past, there was all the Genghis Khan and Kublai Khan and all those guys that would come in, and the Western Russians, which were more European type people, they didn't really trust the Asian Russians that were like in Mongolia and Siberia areas, you know. And she wanted to, I just don't know about those people, so I want to get some of my own people up here. So she does this proclamation, this decree or whatever you want to call it, and says, hey, I know there's a bunch of you people down there in Germany that are really good farmers, and we could really use you as farmers up here in Russia. And she knew that they were having troubles down in Germany with the kings of the time were conscripting or drafting people into their armies to go fight, like the 7 Years' War, and I think the Napoleonic Wars were about that time, you know, those kind of things. And the people were just get tired of, hey, I'm sitting here trying to run a farm and you keep stealing my sons, you know, and putting them in the army and they get killed for nothing, you know. So these Germans, they go, you know, we've had enough of this. And Catherine the Great, she says, okay, you come up here, we'll just kind of leave you alone. You do what you want to do. Just farm and make good crops and feed our people, and we'll let you speak your own language in Germany or German. We'll let you teach your kids German, you know, in the schools. You'll have your own little schools and everything. We won't draft you, and we won't and freedom of religion. You can you can worship however you want. Well, everything was going pretty good. They all moved up, like 7,000 people. What was it? Yeah, 7,000 families packed up out of Germany, and they left and went up through the Baltic Sea, and they get off, I don't know what it's called, St. Petersburg now. Anyway, Stalingrad, St. Petersburg, same town, I think. Anyway, they get off the boat there, and they get on these wagons, and they travel cross country to the farmlands in the center of the country. Wait a minute. That was our story here in America. Everybody gets off of the boat and travels on their wagons cross country to the open plains where you can have all these beautiful crops. Free farmland. Our story isn't the first one. See, being an American, I think that's a unique story to us. It's not. It's stories that have happened previous. You know, people migrate and move wherever it's suited. You know, they're better suited, I guess. So anyway, they pack up and they do the American pioneer, but they do it German to Russia. I thought that was. I just got a kick out of that. I thought, oh, that's funny. You know, I thought, you know, I don't know, I guess. Anyway, so they end up getting over into this big open plain. It was right there by the Volga River. And they started all these little towns and communities over there. The Volga River, if you don't know, flows down into the Caspian Sea. And that whole area is what they call the steppe, S-T-E-P-P, I think, or, yeah, steppe. Anyway, they all moved over in that general area and started farming, okay? And they set up their own little communities, their own schools, their own churches, everything. Mostly Catholic and Lutheran, I believe, okay? And the Soviets, they just left them alone, okay? You do what you want. When you get your big crop, we'll buy your crop from you, okay? So everything was going along just fine. Catherine was happy. The Germans were happy. The Russians were being fed. Everything was going fine. And then politics and everything changed, and next thing you know, Catherine doesn't have the power, or she changes policy or something. I don't remember the full story on it. You can look it all up, but they get dissatisfied in Germany because the governments start coming in and saying, hey, we want you to start teaching your kids in our schools, not your German schools, okay? And the Germans are all sitting there going, wait a minute, you said that we could do this, and you said we could do that, and okay, well, you take one away, it ain't gonna be long, you're gonna be taking the next thing away and the next thing away. Well, you take your schools away, next thing you're gonna take the religion away, then you're gonna take our kids away to fight in your wars. And that's not what we signed up for. We came up here to get away from all that. So they got dissatisfied and everything, and I don't know exactly what time, but it was over a certain period of time. I don't know if Catherine got out of, you know, died or whatever happened to her, but anyway, after that they said, you know, we've heard of this other country called America, and we can do what we did from Germany up to Russia, we can do the same thing from Russia to America. So that's what they did. They get on a boat, and they sailed over to a harbor, get off the boat again. Now this is the next generations, many generations later, but they get off the boat, and they go out to the Midwest of America on, you know, the pioneers, the prairie schooners and stuff. Well, they settled all over the place, but this one area that they settled that I'm interested in right here is central Kansas. Not so much for the Volga Germans, I found out about them because of the fence posts. So I wanted to tell you the story about all this, how it all is connected. I was just really surprised how it was all connected. I guess where I can go with this now is the fence posts. Obviously, they made fence posts out of them, but they could also, let's say you have a big old long fence post and you go to pick it up and it breaks and then now you get a little short piece. Well, you can't use a fence post out, you know, can't use it for a fence post, but we could use it for something else. So they started building things. And that's what the rest of this video is about, is the things that they were building. Well, once they got here to America, they got off the boat there in Ellis Island and registered legally, legal immigrants. And anyway, they came out to different parts of the country. They went up as far as like North Dakota, up into that area, some of them up in Canada, but North Dakota all the way down through South Dakota, Nebraska, down here into Kansas. And a lot of them settled in this area, not right here, but over in the Russell area, Russell and over in that general area. And that's where a lot of the German immigrants settled that were from Russia. Hammer, hammer, hammer the top of these, and they put more and more pressure, and then all of a sudden the rock would finally hit its breaking point and it would snap. Well, with any luck, it would snap in a straight line. Then they go in about 8 or more 10 inches, however big they thought, and they drill another line of straight holes, and they would do the same process, and that piece would snap off. Well, what they could do is they could build things out of this. Now, fence post is obviously what I'm talking about right now, but they built a lot of things. If you remember back my video on my dad's house, the house my dad grew up in, it was made out of this same stone in much the same way. I think it was quarried a little bit to more better standards, I guess. But you know, they make blocks to build the house out of. But let me show you a few things that they could build out of these. Okay. Here's another thing they can do with those stone blocks. Instead of cutting them out in a long and skinny to make fence posts, they also made the same exact limestone. They cut into smaller blocks and actually make buildings like this. This is an actual one-room schoolhouse. It's here in Trigo County. It's right off of Highway 183. Well, we're about 12 to 15 miles south of Waukene, Kansas. And this is the Wilcox School house, and I was reading some in the windows. There's some message boards, and they talk about how William Wilcox was the man that started the town here. Well, there's no town anymore. It didn't make it apparently, but they named the schoolhouse after him. And the schoolhouse they made of stone. You know, they wanted it to be good. Pretty neat. It's pretty neat the way they put all this stuff together. You know, you're driving down the road and you see an old stone house. You don't really think that much of it. You get out and actually start looking into it. It's interesting. It's really interesting. But one of the message boards here said in 1965, a motorcycle club took this place over and turned it into their clubhouse. So this used to be kind of it started out as a school, then turned into a church, then turned into a biker clubhouse. All kinds of history, right? So as you can see on this building here, these are basically fence posts. Much shorter, made into blocks, but they're done the same exact way. And this one's upside down. They're all upside down. The holes, this rock was actually upside down when it was in the ground, and they drilled holes. Here's one. They drill holes down, drill holes down, drill hole down, drill hole down, and they would hammer these in and break them and crack them along a line. And then on these, of course, they chopped them into smaller pieces so they can make a brick out of them or a block. And they would build the building just like just like around the other side of the building here. Backing up. Your old cinder blocks. Okay, so this is a much more modern version of what they were doing back in the day, but it's the same concept. So here's another building over here. Well, actually, here's a wall, and this was done a little bit different. Here's the holes, and then you can see how they scoured away on it to smooth the wall down, the stone down, so it makes a nice smooth finish versus a more rugged, jagged finish on here. So here we are on this much bigger house over here, and it's kind of the same thing. It's a stone. Actually, if you put that stone and this stone together, you basically have a fence post. That's about 6 feet long. You put this stone and this stone together, that's about 7 or even 8 feet long. And if you take that, you stick it in the ground, that's a fence post. But if you take it and lay it down, if you think about, most fences are made out of a pole, a piece of wood for the fence post. And if you take that fence post and you lay it down, basically you're making a log cabin, right? You know, one log, another log, another log. Okay, well, this is basically a stone log on top of another stone log on a log, a log, a log. You get the idea. So this is basically a stone log cabin, if you think about it in that way. And I got to thinking, wait a minute. They're made out of fence posts. Basically, this is a fence post. And if this is made out of a fence post, what does a fence do? A fence keeps the flock together, right? I can see that now. I can see that.